off to, oh, let's say, okay, cool. So super awesome to be here with all of you virtually in Orlando. Always nice to visit Florida, even if it is via Zoom. I am in Atlanta, actually just outside Atlanta in Smyrna, if you're familiar with the area. And I will go ahead and jump in here. Again, I'm Mark. I'll give you a little quick background on me. I, shortly out of college, started working at a branding agency where I really fell in love with design, but I also got a lot of exposure to the tech and entrepreneurship community in Oregon, where I was at the time. Really enjoyed the innovation and business strategy that was present in that world. So those two worlds eventually collided for me in a career in user experience design. I've gotten some really cool opportunities along the way. Speaking, was a 1 Million Cups organizer in Colorado Springs, which you see there on the top right photo there. And one of the really best and biggest blessings in terms of opportunity has been being able to mentor other entrepreneurs and other designers. So I got to teach at General Assembly, their user experience design program here in Atlanta, and just in the workplace have had the opportunity to mentor. So when I started out Trailmerge, that was really foundational for me, was building a business that was around helping folks who are newer in their careers or really talented, launching in design, talented and launching into entrepreneurship, to help them succeed and achieve what they were hoping to achieve in their careers. Now, really the foundational set of startups that we serve are software as a service companies. It's really who we're focused on. If you're not familiar with SaaS or software as a service, basically what it is software platforms that you pay a subscription for. So Slack, for instance, Zoom, those would all be considered software as a service. So some of the things that they are wanting, we've heard these in our conversations with startups that we've done business with and been in community with. One of them is self-service onboarding. They're wanting to reduce that support cost. A lot of times you have founders who are really manually onboarding their customers. Obviously that takes time, takes energy, takes money. It's not super scalable. So they're really going for this product-led growth, meaning that they having sales support manually do that work of getting people up to speed and on their software platform. The platform is designed in such a way that it can work and scale and all that good stuff. So with that, product needs to be learnable, needs to be easy to adopt, needs to be simple to pick up and continue to use, especially with teams when you're looking at the workplace environment where we're using our SaaS tools. So that's where user experience design comes in. We are thinking about the usability, basically architecting what the blueprints will look like for the developers to actually build, but considering how users are going to interact with the platform, move through it, what they're going to do when there's issues or errors or things like that, how those are handled, things like that. So what we do is we actually provide the design teams, especially for startups who are early on and they're not quite ready to bring on a full-time product designer or UX designer. We act as a fractional team for them. So maybe we're coming in for 40 hours a month or maybe 80 hours a month to help them build that solid foundation of a well-designed product so that they can grow and scale their products from an early point in their business. So we're fractional, we're scalable, we integrate within their processes, and oftentimes we're on their Slack channel and other platforms that they're using internally. So we act almost as an internal team, just oftentimes a little bit less in terms of hours. And we are very SaaS focused. So that's been a big benefit for some of our clients, has been really focusing on this one particular space. It's very different from UX design that you would work on for, say, social media application or e-commerce website. Different mentality, different kinds of things that you need to take into consideration. So a little bit about the journey so far. I started this business back in April of 2020 with one other designer. So obviously interesting times, but I didn't have a long commute anymore. So that kind of opened up some time on my end to be able to pursue this on the side of my full-time job as a director of design at a startup here in Atlanta. Our first customer was a loan officer. He owned a mortgage brokerage and decided to get into the software space. We helped him to build a beta version of that. We're currently now working with him still as he's launching to a wider audience. So pretty exciting progress that he's had just come from that initial concept. I went full-time with the business back in February of this year, and we've been growing pretty steadily this rest of this year. This is our current team. We are fully distributed. We actually do have one team member down in the Orlando area. So another exciting thing about being here with y'all. And up next, we're really just, as we've been growing, especially saw some significant growth kind of end of Q2. We've been just working on solidifying processes and team and how we onboard, how we offboard, things like that, so that we can continue to scale effectively and serve our clients and our team members well. We've been working on different partnerships with various communities around the country. So we've been doing webinars in Sacramento, Denver, Colorado Springs, different areas of the country for startup communities who are interested in learning about UX. And we've been working on a new website, hoping to do an internship probably in Q1 of 2022. This is an example of some of the content that we're putting out. This is a good, this is probably one of the best ones to start with, just on what the problem that we're trying to solve is. Tackling design debt, similar to technical debt, if you're familiar with it, but basically saying it's important. This kind of lays out the case of why it's important to look at design from an early state.
Mark, you're down to 1 minute.
And then, one of the things that we've done more recently is these design audits. So basically, what we're doing for SaaS companies that we're working with, we've done 4 of these for different SaaS companies so far. And what we're doing is we're looking at a platform. We're measuring specific areas of their platform for usability. We're looking at the level of severity. How much is this actually blocking a user, so that they can then prioritize the work that they do to remediate some of the usability issues. And with that, I'll open up for any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really, really cool. First question from Denny. Why Trailmerge as a name? Since your name really does not convey what your business does, how do you find potential clients? So maybe take those as 2 separate questions. Why Trailmerge as a name? And then talk more about how you find your potential clients.
Yeah, definitely. So Trailmerge really speaks kind of more to the philosophy of how we work with our clients and with our design team. So it's meant to convey that we're kind of on that same path with you. We're not a typical agency that's going to come in for a short engagement and then charge you a bunch of money and then leave afterwards. And we're more there for the long term. We're with you as basically an extension of your team. So that's a big part of where the Trailmerge name comes from. And then in terms of the how do we go about finding clients? How do we convey our message? It's really more so in terms of how we're building the website, how we're messaging and communicating in forums like 1 Million Cups and other venues, LinkedIn, things like that. We're very upfront and centric in terms of user experience design, software as a service. Those are really our 2 focused points that we try to make about ourselves.
Okay, and maybe along the same lines, what would you consider your most unique? Something that, if you had to pick one thing that separates you from other people in your space, in your industry that are offering this to SaaS companies, What would you say is your number one top unique thing that separates you?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's, I would say a couple things. One is that there's honestly not really very many folks that I've seen out there who are offering these fractional teams to earlier stage software as a service companies, and especially with that focus. So there's a lot of UX agencies out there that have just kind of a very generalist focus, and yeah, we'll do this, yeah, we'll do that. Also, we're just solely focused on user experience design. So a lot of times you'll see UX as kind of an add-on, and when they say UX, it's really more just kind of prettying things up to a development shop's offering. Whereas we're typically working with clients who have a development shop, or not development shop, they may have a development shop, but typically actually have developers on their team already internally, and we're just kind of plugging in that one design spot.
Okay, well, so I think that actually goes to the next question by Rupert. He says, to clarify, you're a website, a message process optimization agency to help SaaS companies offer a more effective website. But it sounds like you're doing maybe a little bit more than just the website. It's the entire experience, or maybe speak to that, please.
Yeah, so typically what we're working with is web applications. So, a good example would be Asana. If you're familiar with the project management software, you log on with your browser typically. They do have a mobile app as well. You can do those as well, but it really is software that is used within a workplace context. That's our focus. So we are actually working on the software itself, the design of the software, how users are using it, how to make it more learnable, to make it easier to adopt, and easier to just overall use.
Okay. What does ultimate success look like for you? Like, what happens in the next 5 years? We look back and like, crap, we did it. Like, we made it. What, maybe in terms of exit strategy, or maybe just in terms of how big or how impactful you are as a company. What does that look like for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've gotten the question a couple times over the last few months, like how big do you want to grow this? And that was something that I hadn't really thought about before. It was just kind of like, let's get this off the ground. But as I've thought about that, I really like the more 20 team of 20 type size, kind of keeping it more tight knit, but also able to have a pretty significant impact in the industry. But I think success looks like a couple of things. I want Trailmerge to be, the best agency in terms of focus on that business to business software as a service. So that's where really what our focus is. The other thing is I'm looking forward to the impact that we're able to make in terms of people who are new in their careers. So the internship is a major thing. So being able to get to that point of stability where we can actually help folks who are very early in their design career to grow and succeed in their careers. And I also would love to, at some point, maybe spin off a product of our own. So.
Awesome. Denny has a question. He says, you noticed a lot of developers on your team, but maybe he missed it. He didn't see any sales or marketing people. Do you have any person that fulfills that role for you?
Yeah, so a good amount of that would be myself. And then Victoria, who is our operations and marketing manager. She's helping us with the marketing strategy side of things. That might be something that considering doing a business development hire at some point. But yeah, right now it's pretty much myself and her.
Got it. Have you done any kind of like a SWOT analysis in the sense of, and my question's more focused on, have you determined what could go wrong? Like, and then taken steps to mitigate that risk? Like, what's the biggest risk that might crater your company, that might kind of like I call this a pre-mortem, like what can go wrong, and then you fix it before it actually does go wrong. Have you done something like that? Because you're in a very, it feels like a crowded space, just from my outside perspective. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but this is UX right now is a very hot topic, and it's almost getting commoditized. So what's the biggest risk in your opinion? And then have you looked, how would you mitigate that so you don't get bitten by it?
Yeah, it's interesting. It is a crowded field in terms of, I would say, people who are getting into the profession. I think what we're seeing right now is a lot of very, entry level, or a lot of seniors who are almost too specialized to really fit well into a startup context where you would be much more kind of generalist. So we kind of bridge some of that gap. So that's not one of the kind of primary things that comes to mind when I think about a threat. It's probably more so in terms of, we are retainer-based model. Everything's kind of based on hours as an agency. And, so there's always the challenge of just, what happens if somebody reduces their monthly hours, or, what happens if we, get significant demand and we need to just hire, but we want to make sure that we're hiring the right people and taking the right amount of time to hire the right people who are really kind of sustain it in the long term. So, but no, we have not done a formal SWOT analysis. I think that's a really good.
Is the hourly model, is that pretty common in the industry where people pay for time?
It is in one form or another. UX is pretty different from, say, marketing design, where because you're in an agile environment, where in agile software development, your needs are changing every couple of weeks. That's why things are running in sprints. So not doing an hourly model kind of sets you up for failure in the sense that you are going to have significant scope changes. So yes, hourly is probably a little bit more typical. But actually, really, I would say probably our main competitor I got discussion the other day is actually an internal team. So it's when a startup that has kind of gotten further along where they're looking to hire W-2s versus hiring an outside company. So there's pros and cons to both, but that's probably the main thing that we see in terms of who we're kind of going up against.
Okay, fair enough. What would your client lifetime value be? Scott would like to know. Do you look to grow individual projects into long-term client relationships? So, just maybe explain a little bit more like lifetime value, because you kind of already alluded to that, where you're kind of staying with them on the trail, right, long term.
Yeah, that's a great question. So we've been fairly consistent with all of our clients so far, and it is a monthly retainer package. So and typically the need goes on for quite a long time. I would think that 6 months would be a very short engagement if we didn't have something like that. So typically it's probably going to be year plus engagements. But we do start out with the design audit, which is kind of a one-time deal. If somebody wants to move forward with us, and they do typically go on that month to month rather than a single project. We can do that as well, but it's really not. It doesn't typically make sense for our clients or for us.
Got it. Makes sense. Graham's question is, what's been your greatest challenge with clients as of now, outside of the pandemic, of course, from the standpoint of working with them, not obtaining them, but what's your biggest challenge with clients working with them?
Probably one of the biggest challenges is that every client has a very different environment and different processes in terms of how they work as an internal team. And one of our biggest selling points is that we're going to adapt to that. So I think we've done a good job of that. But just one of the biggest processes that we've had to really focus on, and especially as we're looking at scaling, has been how do we onboard the clients so we really understand their processes very, very well, so we can quickly come on board and not really miss a beat there. And just making sure that the communication channels are the right communication channels, because we're needing to interact with several people. It's not a typical agency engagement where you can have one point of contact and that works. you really do need to be engaged with several people on the internal team. So making sure that we know all the stakeholders, how they're communicating, what kind of meetings we need to be a part of, which ones are not worth our time and their money for us to be part of. So yeah, those are the kind of unique things that we need to navigate with every single player.
Yeah, absolutely. Bruska says, just make it look cool. And then they have 1,000 change afterwards, thousands of changes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Then he says, money is usually the biggest problem associated with new companies, or maybe even just cash flow. Do you have enough cash flow, or do you have enough cash on hand, capital? And if not, are you planning to raise more? Or are you doing anything in that aspect, fundraising?
Yeah, no, we haven't been looking at fundraising at this point. Thankfully, we are cash flow positive at the moment, so and debt free. So it's been a healthy build so far. I think that one of the biggest things has been, I've had 3 businesses in the past, and probably 2 big things that have been really helpful contributors this time around. One has been that monthly model versus a project model. I've done that in the past, and it's pretty rough from a business standpoint, a lot of feast or famine. And then the other thing was actually just sticking on with my full-time gig for long enough to build up some savings, be able to run on that without having to draw from the business for a couple months when I was first starting out. So
yep, always a good idea to be ready. So I'm going to send our final question over to Mr. Eric Deckers.
All right, Mark, thank you for a great presentation. The question that we always ask is, what can we as a community do for you?
Absolutely. So first off, thank you all for having me. It's been really amazing to be here with you all. A lot of great questions. First off, if you are a startup founder, particularly if you're in the SaaS space, I'd love to just hear about your startup. So feel free to reach out. No obligation or anything like that. But I mentioned, just love to hear about folks' businesses and mentor in any way that I can. And with that, we're looking for partners. So particularly accelerators, startup communities who are focused on the tech space that we can partner with, help out in terms of either mentoring for the programs or webinars, things like that we can kind of help out with on an on-call basis and build those relationships. So those are really the biggest things, and definitely keep in touch. I'm the only Mark Tegtmeier with a beard, I think, on LinkedIn. So, very good.
All right. Awesome.
Thank you.
I'm going to share this one more time and introduce Scott Hill of Define Technology. Scott is on our board, a board of organizers. So, and he's going to give us an update on the Podhub Suites idea that he shared with us last year. So, Scott, what do you have for us?
Well, thank you, Eric. And thank you, Mark, for a good presentation. As Eric had said, I spell technology a little bit of a different way than other people might. Part of that is because since 1996, I've had my license plate spelled that way. And that's how I decided to make my company. So going from there, yes, I am talking today about Podhub Suites, which is a creative co-working and podcasting concept that I've been working on for 2 years now. I am buying a building in South Orlando. I am working on the funding for that, so that's not happened yet. But the building is in the area of the Orange County Convention Center. If anybody's familiar with the Orlando area, we've got the Convention Center, 2 buildings at the top of that picture, and then just about a block away is where my building is going to be. Very excited about that, and the building itself is a 2-story building. And like I said, I'm working on purchasing the building. I've got 2 tenants that'll be inheriting with that, a restaurant and a doctor's office. And then I will be on the 2nd floor where I will build in the co-working space. And the design to it is still in process. There's some changes that are happening because of the impact that COVID has had on the industry, and just you know, what I'm going to have excuse me, have for office space versus hot desks or dedicated desks or the like. For those of you who may not be familiar with what co-working is, co-working, defined in the dictionary, is the use of an office or other working environment by people who are self-employed. So it's a place for entrepreneurs to come in where they're not necessarily having to rent an office themselves. They can do a shorter term lease. They don't have to, you know, do all the electrical hookups and all that rigmarole. And they come in with a community environment amongst other entrepreneurs. And in the concept that I'm developing, I'm going to have podcast studios, professional podcast studios. So it'll be an area for people to come in for co-working, podcasting. There's also a small video studio where they can record presentations or live stream presentations. You know, if they're doing a keynote to a conference, maybe across the country, and they don't want to fly all the way across the country, they can do something virtually. I'm also going to cater a lot to freelancers and designers and those people in the entertainment industry and the hospitality industry that are working with events, planning events. You know, a lot of like lighting designers and audio engineers that may be visiting for one convention, but they're working on the next 3 while they're down here. So I'll have a freelancer package for those types of people. And of course, you know, remote work is something that we're all familiar with now after the last 18 months. But some companies are wanting people to come back to some sort of an office environment, but maybe they don't have their full-scale office in place anymore. And so it's an opportunity to have remote workers that still are in an office or a professional environment as opposed to in their living room or you know, back bedroom or something like that, doing their jobs. Like I said, inside we're going to have the podcast studios, a video studio, hot desks, which if you're not familiar with the hot desk and dedicated desk concept, that's where you can rent it. You can get a membership and you get a desk that you come in and you use for the day, and then you take your stuff and leave, and you come back the next day, and maybe you're at the same desk, maybe you're at one in a different part of the building. Dedicated desks are ones that you actually have some ownership of, and have some lockable drawers space in there. And then we're looking at making the offices modular so that if I need to add in or subtract some as the market desires, would be able to do that. And I'll also offer up for the creatives Adobe Suite, a corporate license that our members can use, and everybody will of course have remote access control via some apps that are out there, and we'll have good safety measures, cleaning, a hand washing station as people come in, you know, with what we've all gone through over the last year, just knowing that people want to be a little bit more safety and health conscious as they come into an office environment, and we want to make sure that we are being aware of that for our potential clients.
1 minute, Scott.
All right. And as who our clients are, we've got a list of avatars, and I've kind of touched on some of that. But you know, like I said, freelancers, event planners, podcasters. There's, we don't think that we're going to be catering to everybody, but if there's an entrepreneurial group or person that has a creative bend to them, then that's the kind of people that we're going to be looking toward. And we are looking to expand once we get the Orlando location up and running to other popular convention cities, such as Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Chicago, Dallas, Las Vegas, and Los Angeles. And I think that's what I've got right now. Like I said, I'm in the final stages of getting my funding for buying the building, and we will be opening up hopefully by the end of this year.
Awesome. Very, very cool. Exciting, local too. Just personally, for some reason, co-working space doesn't seem to quite fit, but I was thinking co-producing space. Maybe need to coin a new term here, because you really seem to be focused on people that audio-visual event, like people that are producing as opposed to just hanging out working. But anyways, do you think, so Eric's question is, do you think the name may need a refresh to better reflect your expanded mission?
I don't believe so, although I've considered that, especially over the past couple months. I haven't come up with anything different. There's some reasoning behind the suites. Each member, because we'll be offering virtual offices and that, and as they become a member, their member number will be their suite number. So as their address, professional address, they get to be in suite number 174 or whatever. So there's some things that are going to make sense as we go along. Yes, I've toyed with coming up with a different name, but I don't have the bandwidth for that. I will take suggestions if anybody's got any other suggestions.
All right. Tim says, Scott, you mentioned using your corporate license. What does that mean? Or please define that.
I've got Adobe, Illustrator, Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects. You can get those on a subscription model, and they do have different levels: education, personal, and corporate subscription models. And what I want to be able to do is, as part of a membership, you can have access to on-site the Adobe product suite on, maybe in one of our areas, we'll set up a specific editing bay or something like that, where someone can come in and we'll have the software available. They don't necessarily have to own the software to be able to work on some of their projects.
Okay. And Denny's question is based on, he says, if you wanted to use the podcasting facilities, what is the cost, and where does the audience come from?
Well, the podcast studios are for recording or streaming. So it'd be for people who have an existing podcast, or they're wanting to develop a podcast. We're not going to provide them the audience. That's not really how it works. It's you create a podcast and you put it out there, and then you market it yourself. And we may be able to put in some programs that help people with developing their podcasts and their marketing systems. The podcast studio is going to start at $75 an hour for general pricing. Membership pricing might be a little bit better than that, but again, they're going to be professional level studios, to the point where maybe a single musician could come in and record some tracks. But we're not doing a full-blown music recording studio. It is something that is specifically geared toward podcasting.
Okay, that makes sense, actually. Mark's question, how have you seen co-working demand and preferences change since COVID started?
It's interesting, because I've been watching this like a hawk for the last year and a half, and co-working didn't take as much of a hit nationwide or worldwide as you might think. You know, a lot of places did struggle through, especially initially, but it's because it's an adaptable type of environment. A lot of the spaces were able to keep their clientele up. Some of them have even grown, and over the last year, dozens of new co-working spaces have opened up across the country. And so the outlook is good. It's just a matter of the owners and operators being smart in how they address, like I say, the safety concerns, the health concerns, and make sure that everybody feels comfortable when they're coming into their space.
Cool. Eric, why don't you talk a little bit about how show planners and organizers can use the space?
Well, again, if an event organizer, or like I say, on the technical side, a lighting designer that's coming in and doing the lighting for a convention or a conference, or someone who is developing the presentation. Usually, if they're at one conference, they're working on that one, but they're also developing, the next 2 or 3 that are on their list. A lot of times they're doing that work from the convention floor. They're doing it from their hotel room. If they're having meetings about it, they're maybe renting out some small ballroom space or conference space in the hotel, and that's really, really pricey. I've talked to a lot of people in the industry, because that's the industry that I come from, about if I could offer up a reasonably priced place where they can come in, have a desk, have a free cup of coffee, have access to a conference room that they're not paying out the nose for. Would that be something that they would be interested in? And I put a price point in front of them that makes sense on my side, and they said they would do that all day long. Get them out of the hotel room, get them into a place with either solid Wi-Fi, or a lot of the spaces I want to have hardwire connection, so people have a nice, good secure connection where they can do their work. And I've gotten a great response from, like I say, event planning professionals and the technical professionals and freelancers.
Yep. And also Mark mentions the Regis location in Lake Mary, says they're pretty much at full capacity now.
Yep.
So there's that trend going on. Yale's question is, are you contacting upcoming conventions through the CVB to solicit them?
Not yet. I've reached out, like I said, via my network to some individuals. As far as upcoming conventions, especially right now, that's still a crapshoot on if they're going to confirm, or Gardner just canceled for next week. So right now the convention industry is still a little sketchy, but the hope is that over the next year, as the whole COVID situation hopefully gets better under control, that will come back. But yes, through the CVB, Visit Orlando, various other organizations. Yes, I've been members of those in the past, and as I get my funding and get opened up, I will be joining a lot of those organizations again.
Nice. What's your break-even point? How many people do you need in this first location to make it viable? Do you have that idea, or how many folks, or what is your biggest profit center? That's also part I'm curious about. I was in the gym industry for years, so you've got these different pieces, but I'm just curious, like where really is your best profit center? Ours was shakes, just making nutritional shakes. It wasn't actually in the gym accessories and the classes. So if you could speak to that.
In the industry, if you've got private office space, and like I said, I've got private office space planned, and I'm looking at my design right now on maximizing that, because like a Regis, that's the equivalent of what those spaces are. That's really selling like hotcakes across the country right now. And that's a more stable source of income, because you've got one office that's selling for $600 to $800 a month, maybe. And so if you've got a year contract with somebody, membership contract, then that lifetime value is set. Hot desks, if you're running at a decent percentage of capacity, because you're getting more per square foot for those, actually turn out to be a higher percentage, but that requires or a higher profit, but that requires having the percentage of them booked out. Some places are able to double or even triple book hot desks, because maybe people are getting a month, but they're only in there 2 days a week, and they're able to flip those desks and keep them occupied even if people aren't in there. So that's how that's able to turn a bigger profit. In my pro forma, I've got a 5-year prospectus that I put together, and I did not double book anything in that prospectus. I tried to be as conservative as possible, and I do have a break-even point. It's a little bit muddled because I'm running 2 different companies, one owning the building and then Podhub Suites being a tenant. And so there's some money that goes back and forth between the 2 companies in the 2 different business plans. But there is a break-even point, and it comes in effectively in about year 3.
Okay. And before we run out of time, I just wanted to ask, why you? Why do you care so much about this, and why are you the right person to head this up here in Orlando?
That's a great question. A few years ago, I started a podcast that I did a whopping 13 episodes of, but it was a lot of fun, and it taught me a lot about podcasting. My background is technical entertainment, originally an audio engineer, and then I've done a lot of design work, and I've done a lot of work, like say, within the convention industry. And over the past couple of years, I've been at and developed some relationships with the owners and operators of co-working spaces around town, and started learning about what their clients are and what their models are and what their goals are. And that just really fascinated me. And I kind of came up with the idea of how I could merge all of these things together. I was originally going to rent the space that I'm looking at, but over the last year, I've realized that it's actually a better financial plan for me personally to buy the building. And so, right now, like I say, I'm in the process of raising $5 million to purchase that building and set up my my first year operating expenses. So it's just,
Cool.
it was a great inspiration. I've had a lot of support from everybody in my network. Everybody has questions and ideas, but all in all, just overwhelming support for the idea.
Well, and that leads into Rupert's question: has 1 million cups helped you in any way?
Well, yes. One, I've gotten good ideas on working on my presentation. I've gotten, through the relationships that I've developed at 1 million cups is how I've found my sources of funding. The people that I've met here, some of them operate their own co-working spaces, or have, or will in the future, or some such. So I've been able to, like I say, just through 1 million cups specifically, I've met a lot of great entrepreneurs, great mentors, and really fantastic people that have, like I said, been very supportive of the idea, and have thrown out all sorts of ideas for me to look at. Whether I use them or not, they're almost always a good idea to at least consider for a moment. Awesome.
Very, very cool. So I'm going to send it over to Eric Deckers for our last question.
All right. So the question is, I guess, what else can we as a community, or maybe you have some individuals in mind, what can we do to help you?
Well, like I said, because I'm not open yet, and I've not started pre-selling anything yet. I'm waiting until some things happen officially with the building purchase before I really start my marketing push. But watch this space. I do have accounts on hold right now with the various different social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. And as soon as I'm ready to do a marketing push, I will be using all of those channels. And I would love everybody to, subscribe to those and follow me where they are. So you can start by following me on LinkedIn or connecting with me there, Scott Hill, and just watching for information as it pops up. And if you know any entrepreneurs that are looking to get out of their living room and maybe into a little bit more professional environment over the next year, have them connect with me as well.
All right, perfect.